coffee.
Well, if no one's gonna drink this, maybe I'll just... Ugh, that's terrible. That's...
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good golly, Miss Molly. Welcome to another edition of Morning Coffee with Brian, the show that lasts as long as my narcolepsy. I mean, as long as my coffee exists, or indeed as long as my fuel up exists. So thank you everyone for joining us. We're going out live, of course, on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and KGRA Digital Radio, our great friends at KGRA. So welcome everyone to what promises to be a very special edition of the show for those interested in classic rock history and some of the major rock tours in history. We have such a wonderful guest today. I'd also like at this point to give a shout out to our sponsor for the show, which is Fuel Up. So Morning Coffee with Brian is sponsored by Fuel Up, and Fuel Up comes in 3 formulas for wake, play, and rest. And at this time in the morning, I, as an old bugger especially, need Fuel Up Hydration Wake to help keep me full of energy, focus, and concentration. It's got 180 grams of caffeine, but it doesn't give you the jitters and there's no crash. It's vegan, and my friend Dustin will appreciate the fact it's keto friendly. And most importantly, it's got no soy, because we do not like soy. We're all toxic, so we don't want soy. So no gluten, no GMOs, but you can find out more at fueluphydration.com and use the code at Morning Coffee Brian for some special deals. So thank you to Fuel Up for sponsoring this show. So we have a bunch of people in the chat already. It's good to see you all here. And we'll be talking to you throughout the show. And obviously, if you've got questions, if you want to ask our guest, you can super chat those to us, and we'll get those to Mal. So without further ado, I think I'd like to introduce our special guest for the day, Mr. Mal Craggs. Good morning, Mal.
Hi. Good afternoon, good morning, everybody, wherever you are.
Yeah, you're in the wonderful sovereign nation of the United Kingdom, I believe.
Yes, that's correct. I'm in the beautiful county of Kent, on the coast. I'm 5 minutes from the beach, and I can, if I walk up there 5 minutes, I can see France.
Yeah, you can see it, but you don't want to visit it, but you can see it.
At the moment, I definitely don't want to visit, because there's a lot of stuff going on over there right now.
Yeah, they're suffering a little bit. But enough of that. We're here to talk about the things that we love and all the positive vibes in the world. And I'm so excited to have you on here, mate. It's fantastic. Many of the acts that you've worked with and many of the tours that you've done, I've had the privilege to be at those, and it's extremely exciting for me. So we're definitely going to get into that. Just before that, though, I'll bring in my esteemed panel who are here to help prop me up when I stumble, because let's face it, that's going to happen. First of all, our regular friend, John Das Wolfen. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Pretty good, mate. And you were saying before there that you've certainly been to some of these gigs that Mal has staged and tour managed yourself, yeah?
Yeah, I was at Plant and Page in St. Louis, and
Cool.
that was an awesome gig.
Yeah.
It was.
Did you spot Mal behind the scenes?
I wasn't quite nosebleed, but I was that level below nosebleed. So my view of the stage was kind of small.
Yeah, that wasn't in the ice hockey arena, was it? I don't know. Yeah, who knows?
Actually, I think it was. Now that I stop thinking about it, I think it was at where the Blues play or did play.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
What's that place called? I can't remember what that place is called anymore.
Well, they've all got different names now, Mal. Like they're all named after banks or insurance companies.
Yeah.
It's like the Ameritrade or something, you know. But anyway, I'd also like to introduce a guy who's been helping me out a lot recently, getting some great stuff done to promote these wonderful shows with the Rowdies. My friend Dustin from Keto Simple. How are you, mate?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this. I'm extremely excited about this.
Yeah, you've been helping me a lot the last few days get prepped for various things, mate. So I do appreciate that, and it's great to have you on board.
I appreciate it. Anything you need.
Cool. And we'll also bring in our wonderful producer, Martin, who will probably lurk in the background. But Martin, good to see you.
Yeah. Man. Good morning, everybody. Good me.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of stuff to cover with Mal and a lot of images of some great bands and tours. But I wanted to start with playing a little bit of a montage because I love it. I love a montage. And the montage will, it's kind of these are some of the acts you worked with. You mentioned about 10 others just before the show started. But let's take a little look back at Mal's history.
What does a tour manager do?
What does it do? Pretty much everything.
I was wrong about God. Turns out he likes that 70s stuff after all. So it didn't piss down, and they played 4 encores.
Let me tell you what it's like to manage a rock band. We're driving all over hell and creation. City to city, roadies and crew, the whole nine. And not one person, not one, ever asks how we're always stocked up on gas.
I do not, for one, think that the problem was that the band was down. I think that the problem may have been that there was a Stonehenge monument on the stage that was in danger of being crushed by a dwarf.
When illusions spin her length, I'm never where I want to be. I'm liberty seeking wet.
Well, I got chills. Mal, did that capture some of the stuff that you did?
Some of it was fantastic, just zoom memories,
Yeah, I mean, there's some pretty major historical rock tours in there, and I'll definitely be wanting to talk about that.
I was very lucky, very privileged, to a lot of people.
When it came to the Peter Gabriel stuff onwards, what was your main role? Was it as a stage manager, tour manager?
Throughout the 70s, I was more or less a roadie. I started at the bottom, carrying that equipment, learned the job, and worked my way up. So I worked for Peter. I was a stage manager for Peter, responsible for getting the set all done and in the right place and stuff like that. And I used to look after David Rhodes, the guitar player, as well, which was fun to say the least, because he had this 12-string guitar that he used to start Salisbury Hill.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I learned it from every night, and I tuned it the best I could. It was never in tune properly, but God bless Peter. David, he never once affected him. He just got on with it. True professional, nice guy.
Yeah, and he had to play that 12-string bit when in the original Salisbury Hill there's like 2 or 3 different guitars. He was doing it all on one. And we saw that little bit of a clip, and that stage had a lot of the light boxes. So I guess you were responsible for that.
And that was the from the Giants Causeway set.
Yeah.
And I think that was the Shock the Monkey tour.
Yeah.
Which I actually I worked with Peter for a couple of years. I worked down at his house and helped him build the studio and record. And then we moved on to the tour, and I'd done a year or so with Peter touring with the Shock the Monkey. And then I got an offer from Genesis, so off I went.
Yeah, so the guitar thing, I mean, Wilco was talking about this, and he said that somebody broke a string, and they said, well, can you change it for me? He went, I don't know how to do that. So they showed him, and he became a guitar tech. So I guess it was similar for you.
Oh, very, very. It was learn as you go, and if and you had to quickly swap out if they wanted you to do. Yeah, I can do that. I done when I done my first American tour with Vinegar Joe, Robert Palmer, I should say.
Yeah, and I got these guys here. Yeah,
I was still just a roadie then, and then they said to me, "Oh, Mel, can you do the out front sound?" I'd never done the out front sound.
Yeah.
So I went, well, if it means me going to America and touring, yes, I'll do front sound.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to be talking about those guys. Vinegar Joe right there, Robert Palmer and Elkie Brooks. Yeah. Wilco had some fun stories about them too.
Big Gavin there on the end.
Yeah, just
he was
lovely little band, and but I would like to actually, with your indulgence, go back a little further, if we could, to back to your very earliest days. Now, this is a salutary lesson in the dangers of rock and roll.
Yeah.
Clean-cut young lad to degenerate hippie.
Oh, yeah. That's the one on my right is just when we start to get into the music business. Then and working with the local group in our area up in the northeast, Hartlepool, where myself, Granny, and Wilco all grew up there.
Yeah.
And so we started, and I had a friend, Les Taylor, who was the bass player in this band, KT's Engine. And he said to me one day, do you want to come along on a gig and help us? I said, sure, that would be a bit of fun. And so I did a few shows with them, and then the equipment was getting bigger and more. And I said to Granny, do you want to come along and help us? So got him on board, you know, and it was just fun. We were 18 years old at the time, I think.
Yeah.
It was great, you know.
So growing up in Hartlepool, though, what was the first music you recall really getting into? What was your earliest experiences?
Well, I mean, actually, we were very into music even back then. We were going to a lot of shows. You know, there was a famous venue in the area called the Argus Butterfly, which is where Led Zeppelin done one of their first gigs.
Wow.
They weren't even called Led Zeppelin when they did that. They were the band of wherever they were called. I can't remember.
Band of Joy. I think it was Band of Joy.
That's it. The Band of Joy. That's what they were billed as, the Band of Joy. But it was Led Zeppelin. Yeah. And we used to go to Middlesbrough Town Hall. They had all-night sessions with some great bands there. And the Kirk Levington Country Club, which was the other one where they had really good bands at the Kirk. You know, John McCoy who owned the club. He was in a band himself, along with Mickey Moody, and David.
Mickey Moody ended up in Whitesnake, I think.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, I saw Whitesnake with Mickey Moody.
I was a good friend of Mickey's, you know.
So did you, Granny, or your fellow rock and roll rowdy, and you guys are a group of, you were all from Hartlepool, and I've got this rock and roll rowdies going. Granny sent me this, and he said he was at this gig in Stockton, which was a Yardbirds Manfred Mann show.
Yeah.
I think you were there too, I think, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, Ruth.
So this is what, 65?
I know, it looks so basic now when you see these things, you know.
Yeah. That's the Yardbirds on stage. I think it's Jeff Beck in the stripy shirt on the side.
Yeah,
very basic.
Yeah. Very basic. I remember seeing Hendrix back then in a small venue, and that was so basic, you know.
Yeah.
And Cream. I remember going to Newcastle, Club A Go-Go in Newcastle, and seeing Cream, you know, and they turned up 2 hours late, walked on stage with a bottle of Newcastle, 2 bottles of Newcastle Brown, drinking them both at the same time from the bottle, sat down on his drums and just started on his double bass drums, just pounded away until Jack and Eric got themselves settled, and then they just went into it, you know.
But yes,
just all these venues we used to go to all the time, you know.
Very basic setup though in those days. Just the instruments, maybe a couple of. I mean, was there a front of house even? I don't recall because I didn't go to gigs until the late 70s. Was there a front of house or was it just the house PA?
Yeah, just the old WEM PAs, you know, I think it was back then.
Yeah, so that must be a lot of. So even before you got into the business, you were going to a lot of these great package gigs.
Yeah, lots of lots of gigs, you know, dotted around the northeast, and you could go and see all of these people like the Yardbirds and Cream, Hendrix. You know, they were all doing these small venues back then.
Incredible.
But they were, you know, you'd see them on Top of the Pops on the Thursday. You know, or Ready, Steady, Go, which was the good show at the time.
Yeah, I Top of the Pops I grew up with. Ready, Steady, Go was gone. I mean, I was born in '63, so a little bit behind you guys. But Top of the Pops, you would get all the big bands on there. It's incredible when you look back on it. You know, just about everyone appeared in it, even though they had to mime.
Yeah, everybody had to mime. Yeah.
So
and driving around, you know, we'd stop at the motorway services, and you'd bump into Thin Lizzy. You'd be sitting in there, or the Stones would be sitting in there, and they'd say, "Where have you been?" "Oh, we've been gigging in Newcastle tonight. We're heading back to London." And that's what you did. You'd be in Newcastle, straight back, finish the show, load the truck out, drive back, because the next one might be, you know, in Brighton. No. There was no rest.
There's no planning. I remember the Beatles talking about like they play a gig in Elgin.
Yeah, used to book a venue.
So I'd like to thank our great friend Darius Munchausen for a $4 super sticker, and I'm looking to see what it's a cup of coffee with a creature. I don't know what that creature is.
It's a pear. It's a pear.
No, it's a pear.
A pear.
It's a giant pear.
Okay. Well, thanks, Darius. Great. Thank you, everyone, for being here in the chat. There's it's good to see you all here. So I wanted to. So you grew up in Hartlepool, and you knew Granny and Wilco, and
yeah.
I think you then at some point you said, "Let's get out the northeast and go to London."
Yeah.
And
well, the band were offered a thing in London, and they were umming and ahhing. And I've just seen you've just put up a picture of the Stones in Hyde Park, 1969. And we went down for that, and I just never went home again. You know, that was it for me. And then the rest of the guys did move down, and we all lived like in a communal house. That it was just a madhouse. Four floors, 4 different flats.
Now, was that you were working for the a band at that time though when you moved down?
Well, yeah, we were working for various bands. We'd all just hang out at places like the Marquee, and people would come in and say, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I'd say, "No, oh, do you want to come and help out?" You know, I'd done a bunch of shows with Stone the Crows like that. I don't know if you can.
Maggie Riley? Was it Maggie Riley?
No, Scottish band, you know.
Yeah. Jim, I don't know, was Jimmy McCulloch in Stone the Crows? Little Jimmy McCulloch?
No.
Can't remember now. Yeah, we'll look it up later. But yeah, I certainly remember them.
And they'd done a shows with them, and then then somebody else would say, "Oh, we're playing at the Rainbow. Would you come and help us?" And so you weren't working for anybody in particular. They just, because it hadn't got that professional. You know, bands didn't have a set. They might have one guy that worked for them. Yeah. And he would just call in his mates and say, "Come and give me a hand." And you would get paid a few quid helping them out, you know. Yeah. And then it's set up a drum kit, and you'd think, "Well, all right then, I've never done this before." Set it up, you know.
Was it literally a transit van and everybody threw the gear in the van and then you went wherever? Yeah. Was that literally it in those days?
Yeah, that was it. What I classed my first kind of professional tour. Granny might tell you about this. He remembers more about it than I do. And once again, Granny just said, "What you doing?" I said, "I'm not up to anything." He said, "Right, we're going to go off to Germany and then down to Italy for a month or two with Van der Graaf Generator."
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember them.
And I said, "I don't even have a passport." Right? He said, "Well, we're leaving tomorrow." And so back then in the day, you could go to the post office and get a passport. It was like a piece of paper with your picture on it, stamped off. It was valid for 1 year.
I remember those. They're just a paper one that you folded up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the time, I had a terrible Zapata mustache as well. So that was stuck on that passport for the next year.
Yeah. Did you look like this though?
Yeah, yeah.
So we're into toxic masculinity on this show, and I think this is today's reminder to young gentlemen out there. You too could look like this.
If you're not careful, if you don't look after yourself, this is what happens.
And I think did the ladies like this one?
It's on Star Trucking, which was probably in the 73, 74, somewhere around about that time. I'm terrible with those early dates. Granny is being a train spotter all of his life. He remembered
this. Yeah, I think he said this was Van der Graaf Generator Tour, but or maybe it was Wishbone Ash. Could be one of those two. But,
we done this whole thing like I think it's this tour that was called Star Trucking, and it was half a dozen bands all lumped together. And John McLaughlin, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, was on this tour as well.
Wow, it's pretty jazzy.
And we were just doing all the festivals. We were the festival. We went from one festival to the next festival to the next, all around Europe. Yeah,
it must have been an incredible experience. It's like you're coming from the northeast of England and just all of a sudden to be catapulted into this touring Europe, all these great places.
Yeah.
Did you see a lot of the continent, though, or was it really just work?
It really was work. For the first, I just remember touring, like going to America for the first time. A McDonald's was 52 cents. Now, there wasn't a McDonald's in England, so that was like food of the gods.
Especially on the per diem you'd be on. So that was
52 cents. Absolutely. Yeah. So, we were on and KFC. So we were eating like kings as far as we were concerned, you know what I mean? And free beer backstage. Oh, living the life. We were living the life. And that's why we did it. That's why we did it, because we loved music. There we were touring America or Europe and getting paid for it.
Wow. Yeah.
It was a job we practically, sometimes we did for nothing, just for the hell of it.
It was
just
kind of like living the dream. I mean, it feels like living the dream. I guess at the time, maybe some of it wasn't so good, but. Yeah.
Oh, it was hellish sometimes. My granddaughter has just been diagnosed with glandular fever. And I was touring America one time in Slade, and I got glandular fever. And they left me. And I don't even know where I was. I was in this hotel room. The maids would come in, move me from one bed into the next bed. I was stripped down where I was sweating to death. And they left me there. And that was the end of my tour with Slade.
Oh, Slade! Well, one of my favorite bands of all time, and one of these British bands that no matter how hard they tried, never made it in the US. I love Slade.
Yeah. Well, I remember being at St. Keel Auditorium. Is that Kansas or St. Louis? Can't remember.
Keel Center is St. Louis.
Okay, Keel Auditorium with Slade, and we had all the back line, and they had a lot of equipment, a lot of back line, all set up. And their manager was Chaz Chandler at the time, who was the manager, the bass player from the Animals.
Yep.
And he came in, and we were all just kicking back. We'd driven all night. We'd set up the equipment, getting ready for the band to arrive to do a sound. And he said, "You guys got nothing better to do. Just take all the equipment down and set it up again. The practice will do you good." We said, he was serious. He was deadly serious. He wanted us to take it all down, put it in the truck, bring it all out and set it up again.
It's like something you would do at a prison camp. Move those rocks from here over there and then move them back again.
It was just unreal. So I was kind of glad I got sick on that tour, because
I've had glandular fever and you wipes you out completely. I mean, you're just
totally.
Yeah, so you didn't even know where you'd been left. They just abandoned you.
I didn't. I had to find out, when I did eventually break the fever.
Yeah.
I had to find out where I was, and then I headed back to Connecticut, where I knew the guys from Wishbone were. And I went and stayed with Martin for a while, and then came back to England in '76. I came back to England.
So the first time
I got a job with Van Morrison. Got a job with Van Morrison.
All right, yeah, and that was that was sort of mid-70s Van Morrison. It was quite folky, quite bluesy.
I never actually toured with Van. I just looked after him I worked with him for 10, 12 months while he recorded the Period of Transition album.
Oh, yeah.
And we were auditioning musicians. We were interviewing producers. In actual fact, Van at one point asked me produce the album. I said, I don't know what I'm doing. And he said, you know better than all these guys what I'm trying to do, because I was a fan. I was a big Van Morrison fan, you know, I loved the guy to death. He said, they don't know what I'm talking about, but you do, because I was sitting in on these meetings and I would throw questions in there to these guys. And they were, you know, people like Tom Dowd, you know, they were producing, you know, they were all big time producers that we were flying them in from all over the, you know, the States into London. So meetings, because you couldn't do this then, you couldn't do a Zoom.
No, and that's another thing that we talked about with Wilco, is the difficulty of arranging anything. Let's say a European tour. So different. You mentioned the passport thing, but you know, just the sheer logistics of it, booking hotels, working with concert promoters. How was that stuff you got involved with?
Well, it was later in life, yes, very much so. That's, you know, when I became a full-time tour manager, that is your life, you know. It's all about the advance work, getting those hotels, getting the flights, cars, food, everything, you know, looking after it all.
And I guess when stage sets started to come in, it wasn't just a matter of setting up the back line and plugging into the house PA. There was a whole production number you had to do.
Yeah, there were a lot of backdrops back then. They used a lot of backdrops. And I remember with Wishbone, we were going off on to do a European tour. We were living in Connecticut at the time. And Steve, the drummer, had this Perspex bright orange Perspex kit.
Yeah.
So for some reason or other, I had this idea of like, we'll put Perspex riser, we'll build a Perspex riser as well, which we covered in mirrors on the bottom and had all the lighting underneath. So when that lit up and the lights hit the mirrors and the Perspex, it just, you know, it was a stunning effect. But what a pain in the arse. Oh.
And that was the band that wanted that. They wanted that.
Well, unfortunately, it was me that came up with the idea, and Steve loved the idea. Yeah. Actually, I'll send you the pictures, Brian, because I've just I've been a little incapacitated. I busted my shoulder, and I had an operation 5 weeks ago on it, and I'm still a bit.
Sorry
but
to
I
hear
don't.
That, mate.
Too late to send them, but I've got pictures of me and Granny in Connecticut and this drum riser.
Oh well, we'll do that for round two, because this is just the first discussion I sincerely hope we're going to have, because you've got so many memories. But yeah, get any
30 years.
Yeah. So Wishbone Action, that's an example of a band kind of wanting something, and you've got to keep the band happy, but you've got all these other things to do, which is work with the theater people and get the lights and the sound, and you got to get the tickets, or everything had to be done. The band are like, oh, we want to do this. Was there a lot of contention with bands?
Nothing much has changed. It's just that the budgets and things like that on the tours that I did changed. Yeah. So, and the personnel grew along with the bands. So you had people taking over that. You know, you had a production manager, you had a tour manager, you had a stage manager, you had a guy that looked after the guitars, a guy that looked after the drums, keyboards, you know, so it mushroomed, you know, which it had to do to grow. The industry had to grow. Yeah.
But so this is Wishbone Ash, and you worked on a number of tours with these guys. I guess. Was it still transit van level, you know, panel van, or were you sleeping in the van? Were you sleeping on the bus?
No. When we'd done these guys in America, we had a mobile home that we would self-drive ourselves, the crew, which was great fun. And we had a company out of Texas, Shoko, out of Dallas, Texas, and they took care of all the equipment.
Nice.
So we just turned up same time as the Shoko guys, we set up the back line. They did all the lights, all the sound.
Yeah, no, Wishbone Ash are, I wouldn't say underlooked now. I mean, the people still aware of them and remember them. And they're still, I think Martin Turner's still touring. There's still
he is. He's in America. Martin's in America right now on tour.
Yeah.
And
in the early 70s, they were a fairly big band. I mean, you must have been, they did lots of American TV performances.
Yeah.
World tours. I mean, did you tour Europe and America with these guys?
Yeah, and Japan. I done my first American tour with these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this, if I can indulge myself, there's a story there as well, because we'd done a North American tour, and we were in Calgary in February.
It's near where I live.
In February. So it was minus. It was minus. I never want to go there again, minus. And we'd done this show, and we froze the car. Nobody told us about plugging the cars in, So when we came to leave the next day, got in the car, of course, the engine blocked, frozen,
Oh, shit.
We went from there, but we went from Calgary to Honolulu.
Slight difference.
Just a slight, I think, where it was 72 degrees, in Honolulu when we arrived, which it was minus. I remember I used to drink whiskey back then, and I had a bottle of Chivas Regal on the loading dock, and it froze.
Oh,
it
geez,
got that cold,
Trust me, my friend, I live very near Calgary, and it snowed yesterday. It's still really cold. It gets down to minus 30, 40. Wilco was telling us, Mal, that when he went to Scandinavia with Vinegar Joe in 72, that he went with a t-shirt and a pair of jeans. Were you guys prepared? Did you know what you were going to be facing?
No, I had no idea. I had one of those kind of knitted Navajo sweater type things that used to be very fashionable in the 70s. Yeah. That's what I remember wearing one of them. That was my warm coat in Calgary, and it was minus degrees.
And Calgary then would be a real cow town. I mean, it would be pretty, it's what they call cow town here. I mean, it's like the Texas of the North. It would have been not the big city it is now. It must have still been pretty rough and ready.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. We dual-ed, there was with Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show. Their next venue was in San Francisco at the annual Hookers Ball.
Hookers Ball.
Genuinely.
I gotta ask you.
I mean, it stands to reason. There's a players' ball. There'd be a hookers' ball.
I got to ask you a question here, because Wilco said until he did tours in America, there were no groupies. Like, groupies didn't exist in Britain. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, if they did, we weren't aware of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember doing America and going to, and you'll know who I'm going to talk about. We went to Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, we know who lives there.
Robert Palmer. We went to Little Rock, Arkansas, and I did get to meet Connie, who later written about her. Sweet Seed Connie was doing her act. She had the whole show, and that's a natural fact.
So that was an eye opener for you then.
We're coming to your town.
Yeah,
Connie was famous. The bands used to send a limo to pick her up. She'd turn up. She'd do her thing.
Yeah, well, rock tramps, as that is. We just called them rock tramps back then. I think he's quoting because Rowdies isn't that old. But so I just wanted to briefly play a little bit of Wishbone Ash. Forgive me if I fiddle about here, just for a few seconds, so everyone. So I guess, Mal, that you must have been around in this era, 73.
Yeah. Oh, I was definitely there with Ted. With Ted Turner, because I stayed there. I was still working with him. Ted left, and Laurie Weisfield became the guitar player.
Yeah. This is on an American TV show. I think it's a Don Kirshner's rock concert, maybe, or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty big band at the time, and
They were.
Yeah, fantastic twin guitar work. Very revolutionary at the time.
Yeah, we were in Criteria, and the Eagles were in the next studio to us, and they could hear this dual guitar playing, and they came in to listen. They will, and so, you know, for me, I credit the Eagles and their guitar playing down to Wishbone.
Yeah, now if you think about Hotel California.
Yeah,
think about Hotel California with that. Well, I mean, that's a triple guitar thing going on, but it's the same concept, intertwining lead stuff. I mean, so looking at the Divina says, I'm looking at Wishbone Ash's album cover Argus, which we've got up here. Reminds me of
it's 50. You know, it's 50 years old now. That, which is scary.
It is scary, isn't it? Also, I think George Lucas may have seen this because it looks like the back of Darth Vader's head.
Doesn't it ever, eh? Yeah.
He may very well have seen this, and you never know.
Well, it was a big album, Argus, in the early 70s.
Been around, he could have been a fan.
Oops, sorry, different band. There we go. Were you there for the recording of the albums as well, or as the...
Some of it I was, yeah. Some of it. You know, it just depends, because you'd go off and do other stuff because recording was boring, you know. It was just it gets very repetitive being in the studio with them.
Yeah.
You know.
But you still had to take the gear in and out of the studio, I guess. Like somebody had to set
you know, and then you'd be in and out, you know, they'd say, oh yeah, we need this. So you'd go off and you'd buy, you know, wherever they needed instrument wise and stuff. You'd get them all set up and then you'd try and disappear.
We talk about being in the recording studios being boring, and I've been in my fair share of studios, and it is very boring. But then at the same time, you look back at hindsight and you wish you would have been bored during some of these records being made.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Well, like I say, when I worked with Van Morrison, I was in the studio with him. It was the Manor Recording Studios in Oxford, which was owned by Richard Branson, and it's where Tubular Bells was recorded. And I spent months there with Van, and it was just fantastic. I loved every minute of it, you know, being in the studio with Van.
Yeah, he's a real musicologist as well. I mean, he likes just to sound right, rootsy, authentic sound.
Oh, yeah. He used to just walk, and this is one of his, he'd walk in the studio playing his guitar, and as soon as he walked in, the engineer had to press record. So everything was recorded in that studio while Van was in there.
Did you ever see him with them back in the 60s?
Van, what are we doing here? And he said, why are you asking me? You're the musicians. I just wrote the song. Why do you think I'm paying you guys? You know, they were saying, but we do. He said, well, just do it. You're the musicians. You're professional. Make it up. He wouldn't give them clues, no structure. Just he would be strumming along, and they just had to join in. He got rid of a guitar player because the guitar player said to him, "Oh, Van, shall we go for a take this time?" Well, Van went ballistic. I had to peel him off the ceiling, you know. And he said to the guy, "What?" He said, "Well, when he calmed, I got him calmed down. He said, get the guy in the studio, run the tracks. I want to hear what he's playing." And he said to the guy, right, now play what, and Van turned around. The guy was playing, he was a very famous guitar player. I'm not going to name him though.
Go on.
And he, when we know each other better.
That's what she said.
Van just turned around to me and he said, get rid of him now. And it was like 11 o'clock at night in the middle of Oxfordshire. He said, get rid of him now. It was a residential studio. Everybody was living there. So I had to get rid of him.
It's interesting that, though, Mal, because some artists are completely the opposite. They're completely dictatorial about what the others do. But he's obviously the other way, completely like, I know my thing. You guys get in sync with me.
Yeah, he just records everything and then just gets those scissors out, snips all the bits he likes, chops it all.
I remember, I have seen him a few times, but in later eras, like 90s onwards, I've seen Van Morrison a few times, and I always really enjoyed his live performances because they seem very relaxed to me. Like he doesn't rock out. He's all very warm and relaxed. He can. It just really is. Van, you never know what fan's going to turn up. Well, I've seen him do blues gigs, a jazz gig that was just all jazz, and then just more hits as well. I've seen all three different flavors of them.
Well, he done one at Glasgow Apollo, which you may or may not know, but the stage there is very high, and it's not very deep. And he walked out because he didn't do a sound check. He just leaves that to them. He just does his thing. He walked out, seen the height of the stage, went to the back of the stage and done the whole set from the back of the stage. Nobody could see him.
And in Glasgow, they're not a very forgiving audience, I believe.
I'd done the same venue with Status Quo one time, and that proscenium, the balcony there was moving.
Jumps.
I think we measured it at 13 inches. Did it.
Were you working with the Quo when they did the live album, and that it was at the Glasgow Apollo they recorded that?
No, I wasn't. I went Rockin' All Over the World.
Oh, that's what this one's from. This picture,
And I'll tell you about my interview with those guys because I was living at the Manor Studios at the time. The guy called me and he said, "Oh, can you turn up at Pinewood Film Studios? We're doing production rehearsals there with Status Quo." Said, "We got a job. We want you to look after Francis." I said, "Oh, okay then." And I turned up there the next morning, and Francis came to me and he went, "Do you smoke?" And I said, "No, I've just given up thinking cigarettes." He said, "No, do you smoke?" I said, "No, I gave that up a long time ago." He said, "Do you know how to roll a joint?" I said, "Yes, I do." And he gave me all the makings. He went, "There you go. Give me all the stuff.
That's your job.
Go and sit over there, roll me 6 joints, right?" And they got on, did it, doing what they do best. And I've done the joints, took them back to him, and he inspected them, and he lit one up, and he went, "Yeah, the job's yours."
It sounds like Snoop Dogg. He pays like somebody like 40 grand to do that.
So that was your audition. You got the gig. The Quo,
I got the gig.
For those who don't know in North America, those who don't know in North America, again, another band like Slade who worked hard but never really made it in America. They did, I think Rockin' All Over the World was a hit.
Yeah, they had a big hit with Pictures of Matchstick Men.
Way back in the 60s.
Yeah. And they did tour America, but you know what? Francis didn't like touring in America. I don't know why, but he's a homebird. He likes to be where he knows, and he didn't know America. And so they just refused to go back there.
Yeah, it's a shame because they're a massive band worldwide, but never made it in the States. But the quintessential boogie band, as you were saying. And I guess the Apollo, you mentioned the Glasgow Apollo, which I think is gone now. It's a famous venue. You used to work there a few times. They made, as you said, the balcony. They used to worry. I would never have gone underneath that balcony because it used to go up and down like this. And it made everyone get up and bounce. The thing would be visibly would go up and down.
Yeah, it was going like 13 inches in each direction. I think.
Like, oh God, I'm not standing under that thing. But
I mean, there's amazing footage of them at Live Aid because they opened all of Live Aid.
They did,
you know, and you count over the audience, and you can see the audience undulating. You know,
the clip.
I love that shot.
The clip we showed in the montage of them was at Stafford Bingley Hall, and you can see the crowd. That's what Go gigs were like. Everyone's bouncing.
Yeah.
Stafford Bingley Hall, you must have worked at a few times again.
Yeah, definitely.
Legendary venue again. Used to be a cattle shed during the day.
Oh,
it stank of cattle.
Yeah.
But yeah, you must have done a few gigs there. That would be, and it was way out in the country as well. Interesting place. So that, like, working with the Koa, actually, I think I have a picture of you.
Yeah, I mean,
this
a couple of them. Yeah. No, that's not. That was Peter Gabriel. I left Quo to go and work with Gabriel.
Yeah. But this was your good lady wife who was working for Quo as well, I believe.
She was working for Quo. That's how we met, actually. I'll give you the story. We met in Australia on the Rocking All Over the World tour. So she was living out there. She used to work in the same offices. She used to look after the Faces, Rod Stewart and the Faces.
Wow.
Anyway, we finished up. Yeah.
Yeah, this was working. I think it was Woman
last week. Yeah.
So the Quo. I actually may have a little clip. Just to, forgive me because it's one of my favorite bands of all time. So I always like to talk about the Quo, and you and I know who they are. So there's a little tiny clip of them.
From the Blue for You album.
It's Stafford Bingley Hall.
Yeah, just check it.
I was kind of hoping we'd get to the bit where the crowd start bouncing. It's Stafford Bingley Hall, yeah. Yeah, the crowd shots for the Quo are just incredible. But cheers, John. Thanks for joining us. But yeah, the crowd shots are not. I'd have to flip forward, but they just go mental for the Quo.
Yeah.
There you go. You'll start to get them bouncing. But you can imagine on a balcony in a theatre.
That was their pose. That was them.
That was them. That's quintessential Quo right there.
Yeah. Right there. Lay down and let me in.
Roll over, lay down.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Oh, I'm getting an echo of it. There we go. So forgive me for dwelling on that one. So we're nearly at the top of the hour, and we've barely scratched the surface of your early career. You worked with other bands like Uriah Heep was another one.
Yeah. Mickey Box, loved the guy.
Yeah. Let me just find. Here we go. So Uriah Heep, another. I guess they're considered sort of semi-metal, but I mean, they're more of a Deep Purple style band. A lot of Hammond organ.
The Hammond organ, yeah.
What were your experiences with those guys like?
Well, I was predominantly. I looked after Mickey Box,
the guitar player,
and he's one of the nice guys. You know, in the music biz, he's definitely one of the nice guys, and he was so funny. He used to.
I love this picture.
Yeah, I remember being on stage, and he used to do this thing. He played an SG, and he'd throw it up in the air, and he'd do his pose to the crowd, and then he'd catch the SG and keep on playing.
Yeah.
I think he forgot it was up there one night. You know, it come down, bang!
Oops.
That could have been it. He hit the stage
Yeah.
because the guitar hit him, and down he went. He was,
you were guitar taking for him then?
yeah.
So that
He came on stage one night. I gave him a guitar lead that was 18 inches long, so he had to stand on top of his speakers. He could not move. He was like, and he just took it in his stride. That was Mickey. He just stood there and he looked at me. He gave me one of those looks, and he couldn't move. He was just up to the gear, and he just played away until I went out and changed it. You know.
Yeah, that was your joke on him.
Yeah. We used to. It was always at the end of the tour. We used to get Roadie's Revenge, and we'd always do something like that. The drummer Lee, he used to stand on his tom-toms at the end, do this big thing, and he'd jump up and stand on his tom-toms and stand there like an Adonis, and then jump off, and there'd be a big explosion, bit of pyrotechnics, and he'd be standing on the stage with the rest of the guys.
Yeah.
Well, at this one end of one tour, we put a pizza on each of his tom-toms as as the lights went out. Nobody could see him climbing on the drums, so we stuck a pizza on each foot, so he's standing there, he can't do anything about it, and then we put a mini trampoline for where he was going to land.
It speaks to the relationship with the band, so we
could get away with you could not get away with that now.
No.
We walked across this. It was back in the day when there was all the streaking going on as well.
No, right.
And the whole crew walked across the back of the band are playing, doing an encore or something. The whole crew walked across the back of the stage, butt naked.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Everyone in the crew.
I wish we had video footage of that just so we could see.
Just walking across. I think it was with you, right? And we were opening, or we were doing a show with, because it wasn't like opening for bands. You just done the shows together. A Foreigner would just come out. I don't even know where love is. And Mick Jones would stand at the keyboard to play that intro, and then step out with his guitar. We gaffer taped his legs to the keyboard, so he couldn't move. That was it. He was stuck there.
You bastards. Sorry,
he did not like that. He wasn't very pleased.
We'll pick that up after the break, Mal. Sorry to interrupt you because Martin's signaling we're going to go to the break.
Okay. Hi guys, this is Gary from Pop Culture Minefield here on KGRA, and we're leaving for our first break. I hope we survive.
Did you know 75% of Americans
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Oh wow, we survived. Welcome back to the commercial break. Now for some more Pop Culture Minefield on KGRA.
Welcome back, everybody, to Morning Coffee with Brian on Pop Culture Minefield. Thank you all for being here on YouTube and on KGRA Digital Radio and all the other platforms that we're going out on right now. Appreciate it very much. Thanks to everybody for being in the chat here today and doing making such great comments. And we are here with our wonderful, wonderful guest, Mr. Mal Craggs. Thank you for joining us, sir. This is an absolute blast.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope I'm not boring people.
Oh God, no, we barely got started. I mean, 2 hours is not going to be enough. We're going to talk to you again for sure if you're up for that. But yeah, just so bands, you pranked a lot of bands. Wasn't Mick Jones a bit of a? Did he handle that okay?
No, he didn't.
No.
He didn't take it well at all. He did not take that well at all. But about it, we weren't going to gig with them again. You know, that was just it. We were just getting our own back. You know.
Yeah. That's. I didn't realize you'd worked with Foreigner too. But I guess, as you say, you just picked up gigs with all sorts of bands that
you
knew each other.
Yeah, because we knew each other. And like I say, I finished. You know, done that tour of Italy with Van de Graaff Generator. And that was about 1970. So I figured that's when I got paid every week from the same band for an extended period. You know, so that was my first professional.
Van de Graaff Generator.
They had a number one album and single in Italy at that time.
Was it Pawn Hearts? Pawn Hearts?
Don't ask me technical. Brian.
Well, an interesting band because very little guitar playing. I know Pete Hamill could play guitar, but it was very much a keyboard and wind instrument driven progressive.
Keyboard and the twin saxophone, or two. You know, he used to play twin sax. He used to play alto sax and soprano at the same time.
At the same time, yeah.
Yeah, quite. You know, and a drummer and a bass player. You know, well, we didn't have a bass player at first because the keyboard player had the bass pedals on the Hammond organ, you know, which was fantastic. That gets deep bass.
Those Hammond organs must have been a pain in the ass to move around.
Killers. Yeah. I do have that testify.
Backbreakers, yeah, but I mean, the Van de Graaff
turned out to split them. You know, there was a split Hammond organ, which was great. You know, because it was just the top half and the bottom came. You know, but you still had to get those big Leslies up and down.
Oh, the revolving speaker thing, yeah.
All views were just horrendous to get them. You know, there was, I forgot where in Bristol, the granary in Bristol. Okay. That was like this narrow staircase. Oh man, trying to get Hammond organs and Leslies up those stairs was just a killer. You know,
but isn't
you
that
had to get on the pit. You know,
wasn't that the job of the keyboard tech, Mal? You were a guitar tech.
No, we were all done it. We all, you know.
Yeah. So we're in the second hour of the show now. I mean, we've barely scratched the surface, I guess, on your early 70s, your 70s stuff. But at some point, you became involved with or got the gig with the whole what we would call the Genesis family. So Peter Gabriel. How did that come about?
Well, just once again, it's just not what you know. It was who you know. It was just I was in the right place at the right time. I'd done some. I was working with Status Quo, and a guy, Andy McCrill, who was working. He worked with Genesis for a long time, and he said to me, "Oh, what you doing? Can you put a crew together for me?" And I said, "Sure, what you doing?" And Genesis were doing these just a few gigs in England. I think it must have been a primer to go enough to do a big shows. And I said, "Sure, you know." So I found this crew and I put them all together. So I was like the crew boss. We traveled around with them. We had our own bus, and you know,
This was still just the UK branch of that tour.
Yeah, that. And so that's it. And then I went and got this job with Peter. You know, they said, oh, the management office just called me and said, do you want to come and work with Peter? And I said, well, yeah, of course. You know.
Yeah, you said
anything particular, you know, at the time. So
you said when it came to Peter, you were more into the set and stage management then.
Yeah. Originally, I went down there. I lived at Peter's house for a year. You know, helping him do the studio, and he was recording, and we done rehearsals, and he was finishing recording the So album.
Oh, right. Okay. So
so we helped him with all of that. I sleep in Peter's bed every night, by the way.
Yeah. With Peter, or is this a tale that we should be telling?
No, he had this Victorian brass bed which I used to sleep in down there, and Peter never did. And so I asked him if I could have that bed, which he sold to me. He didn't give me it. He sold me it.
All right. Oh, that says a lot.
But
even then, he's worried about money.
And again, you know, if you would ask me about favorite shows, I'll say every show I did with Peter Gabriel. You know.
And that tour, the tour you were principally involved with, the Shock the Monkey tour. It's interesting that there's not a lot of video footage of it, which is weird. That clip I showed at the beginning was really 8mm or 16mm footage married up to the audio of the show. There's very little actual video footage, which is weird because you think Peter Gabriel, I guess you would know, went to a lot of effort. You were there with his sets.
Yeah,
it's hard to find good video footage of that tour, but it looked fantastic.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Loved it. Loved every night. I could stand. I'd watch Peter one night. The next night I would watch Tony Levin, because he's playing that stick bass, which was a totally new instrument, you know, and it was just great to see all of that. You know, every night I would watch something and find something new. Yeah, we had those light columns, fluorescent light columns.
I think you mentioned to me that they ended up in Toronto for some gigs and David Bowie got involved.
Yeah, well, no, we opened for David Bowie. Bowie was doing the Serious Moonlight.
Right.
Tour, and we opened for him in Calgary. It was an outdoor event, and then we went to Vancouver and played at the Dome in Vancouver. Yeah, it must be. Yeah,
it was Vancouver. You're right. Sorry. Yeah, the Toronto thing was a different thing. Yeah, that was a different band.
Yeah.
So did you get to interact with David and his band a lot?
Yeah. Those were such nice guys. That his band, you know. And I met David subsequently. I'd met him once. Well, when we first started in London, we were this. One of the artists had his own PA system built.
Yeah.
While he wasn't touring, we used to do gigs with it. And David had just released Hunky Dory, and we were doing sound for him at the time. You know, so
he was David Bowie then, not David Jones.
And then got to meet him later on when I worked for Wishbone. Me and Ted were in LA, living in this geodesic dome up in the hills, you know, the Malibu Hills, living in a geodesic dome. And we flew from LA. We went to Chicago to see David. So I met him again then, and then later on met him quite a few times anyway. And he was such a nice guy, just such a nice guy.
Yeah, so he'd been around since the 60s as David Jones originally, and because he had to take Davy Jones away because there was another Davy Jones, the Monkees, changed to David Bowie. I think Hunky Dory was that pre Spiders from Mars. Like it was the album before that. Yeah. He was really
it was kind of that's the one that kind of launched him into being David Bowie, I think.
Yeah, so it's a Space Oddity type.
And the Spiders from Mars, I worked with Trevor, was the
bass player.
The bass player. Done a tour with Uriah Heep. Trevor was the bass player that on the tour that I did.
Yeah, I guess it was a fairly close-knit scene in those days. I mean, you mentioned places you'd hang out at, the musicians would all hang out.
Same places, yeah. The famous couple in London anyway was the Marquee Club. Everybody played at the Marquee Club. You name the band, they played there. You know,
Speakeasy as well.
Speakeasy.
Yeah.
I remember doing the Speakeasy one time with this little band that both Granny and myself worked for. It's funny because he's just sent me this thing from Reading Festival when we done Reading Festival in 1971 with this band called Armada, who were they had thoughts of being another King Crimson, I think, but never quite. But we were doing the Speakeasy one night, and this guy came up to me and he said, "Do you think there's any chance of me jamming with the band?" And they were very structured. Like I say, King Crimson type. And I said, I don't know. I will ask them, right? And they said, no chance. What's he said, well, he does a bit of vocals and keyboards. Said, no, can't have him. Sorry, Elton, they won't let you play with him.
The day you turned Elton John down, that would be your high. Imagine looking back in that 40 years later.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Oh, God.
Well, Elton was a fixture on the scene in sessions. He played on Space Oddity for Bowie and other things.
Elton was a great keyboard player.
Yeah, long before he became a star, he was playing on everybody's stuff. I do want to welcome to the show my great friend Pope Metallicus the First, not the second.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
No, good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. So you got into the Genesis family, which must have been amazing.
Yeah.
It was a peak period for both, Peter Gabriel, for Genesis as a band, and for Phil Collins, all three entities simultaneously doing big stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I went from one tour to the next, to the next, to the next, for the next 15 years.
Yeah. Do you
with those
recall
guys.
the WOMAD festival? I think you mentioned you did some
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, that would have been about 1980, 79, 80. It was the first one that he did, Peter.
Yeah.
He bankrolled it, and he brought all these world musicians together, the Burundi drummers and people like that, which is fantastic,
What was the challenges of getting set up at a big festival like that for you as a set guy and at that time? How hard was that?
Well, if you've done festivals, although Peter was the headliner at that one, it was his festival, so we could get what we wanted. But usually, if you were doing festivals around Europe, jumping from festival to festival, you stripped the set back. You stripped it right back.
Yeah.
We'd done a one like that while I was working for Peter, and this was the lineup for the festival, and we were jumping from festival to festival to festival. Eurythmics, Simple Minds were the opening act.
Yeah, I see that here. Simple Minds, yeah.
Echo and the Bunnymen. Wow.
Echo and the Bunnymen.
U2 were on the bill. Peter Gabriel and Van Morrison was headlining. Strange lineup.
Yeah, I see Robert Fripp on here. He mentioned King Crimson, of course. Robert Fripp, who worked with all these.
done a US and Japanese tour with King Crimson as
Was
well.
that was Bill Bruford the drummer on that one, or
Yeah,
can you remember?
yeah, Bill was and Adrian Ballou.
Oh
and Fripp. It was just amazing.
Because Robert Fripp and Toya Wilcox, who've been married for many years, they're like the Queen and King of England now. They do these little videos from their house, and they're all very funny.
Sunday lunch with Toya and Robert.
That's right. It's hilarious stuff. I mean, who knew he's such a joker? He's a funny guy.
Oh, he is really, really funny. He's got a wicked sense of humor. Really wicked sense of humor.
Because the music is so serious, King Crimson. Like, deadly serious.
Yeah. I mean, this band Armada used to use the same rehearsal space as Crimson in the day. And there was a stool there, this black high-backed stool. Nobody was allowed to touch that. That was Robert's stool. Nobody would sit on it, touch it, do anything. You couldn't move it because Robert would know. And believe me, having worked with him, he would have known. Yeah.
How rock and roll is that you sit down through the entire gig?
Yeah. Well, that was Robert. Yeah. And the tour I did with him, he sat on the stool on stage with all these electronics around his feet. Amazing guitar player. He'd go, now I think I'll be Jimi Hendrix tonight. And he would. He'd start playing like Jimi Hendrix from nowhere.
I did a prog show, Mal, where it was all about prog, one of my Monday shows on my own channel, and I had the clip of Bill Bruford saying when he joined King Crimson, no one would tell anybody what key anything was in. You just had to know.
Yeah. Well, that's a bit like Van Morrison done the same thing.
Yeah.
What key is this in, Van? I don't know. You're the fucking musicians. You find out.
But you would
work
ask
it out.
So if you asked, they'd look at you like you were mad. Go, what do you mean you don't know?
I guess when you're on that level musically, you do just expect everyone else to know. And
yeah, well, that's it. I mean, because the guys they played with were top musicians, so you would think they would know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Pope. We've already covered Uriah Heep, but we'll do more Uriah Heep in our second conversation with Mal. But
looking at that little thing of Peter Gabriel there, Crystal Palace football ground. That was my local team, so it was great for me to do a show there.
Yeah, you did a lot of football grounds, I guess. I mean, I went to loads of gigs at football grounds in the UK. I guess it was a big.
Yeah.
Certain size of band, that was what you would do.
Yeah.
Soccer ground.
Yeah. Actually, that's when I started, like you say, when I started working with that Genesis family. That's they started doing those big venues worldwide,
That's an interesting lineup in this one because supported by the Thompson Twins and the Undertones. I mean, I love the Undertones.
Yeah.
Great little Irish band.
Touch of the Roadies' Revenge there, the Thompson Twins. They had their Revox tape recorder underneath one of the sections of stage. Peter used to use it as a dressing room during the show. And they had their Revox because it was recorded, so they were doing lip syncing to it.
Right.
They went. And so we used to pop in and put our finger on the reel and then just let it go again.
This is the Milli Vanilli of their day then.
Nasty things, you know what I mean?
You could have replaced
it was
the
fun
tape
at
completely.
the time.
Yeah, I bet
Sorry,
they
guys.
hated
Sorry, we didn't mean to ruin your show.
Yeah. So then through the Peter Gabriel stuff, and they were you at the gig where they actually did a benefit for WOMAD to help Peter out?
Well, yeah. I'd already switched. Oh no, had I? I can't remember. It was on that borderline where I was starting to work for Genesis, and I think this was one of the gigs where I had to put all the crew there, and of course I was affiliated with Peter at the time as well, and we carried Peter on stage in a coffin. That was his appearance, because he was, you know, they were raising him back from the dead.
Yeah,
they were
he spent so much.
He was going to declare bankruptcy.
He spent so much money on WOMAD,
yeah, into this WOMAD thing, and it wasn't that successful. It's still going now. It's still happening now. You know, it's got more successful.
So
but it was
they did this reunion gig to make some money so he wouldn't go bankrupt. So it's one of the few times Gabriel has played with him since he left.
Yeah. I mean, he stayed good friends, especially with Tony Banks, I think, and Mike.
Well, they were school friends back at wherever that public house, Charter House, I think it was.
Charter House, Guildford.
So Phil is the upstart Cockney or whatever that joined the band.
Yeah. He went to acting school. His mum ran an acting school, and he went to acting school. So he played Artful Dodger in Oliver at one point, on stage.
So so you started working for Genesis at a time when, I mean, they were always a big band, but they became a big pop band.
Yeah.
With things like Invisible Touch and Mama and stuff. So they'd gone from being just this big prog band with lots of hairy arse guys watching them to pop stars, really. I mean, that must have been quite a frenzy around those tours.
Well, at first it was still all those airy-arsed guys, you know, that knew more about Genesis than Genesis themselves. Yeah. And I think we started to get a spread on that after Phil got popular as well.
Yeah.
You know, because he was doing those softer love tone songs, you know.
He was, a lot more ballady stuff, really.
Yeah.
Like Groovy Kind of Love was a big hit, and all these soft ballads,
Take a Look at Me Now, which was from a movie.
Against
he got
All Odds.
For that,
Against All Odds, So the parallel career was going. Did you work both for Genesis and Phil?
Yeah, so I'd finish a Genesis tour, and Phil would be going out, so I'd jump on Phil's tour, and and Phil would finish, and Genesis would be ready again. So off I'd go.
And what was your role particularly there, Mal? Were you, again, was it set design, or was it just?
No, I was then, by that time with Genesis, I was I was assistant tour manager, but then I became the tour manager because the tour manager at the time, Andy McCreel, who'd worked for the band for years, became their accountant, the tour accountant. So he was dealing with all of that, and I was doing all the day-to-day logistics, looking after the band and everything.
So how difficult is it to set up a major world tour for a major band like this?
It's a lot of hard. If you do your upfront work, it's easier when you go on the road. If you haven't done the front work, it's hard work because you're trying to get on top of it as you're going.
Yeah, I mean, just the sheer scale of moving everything around. I mean, did they take all their gear with them to every country?
Yeah, they did, because it was very specialized. Their lighting rigs, which they helped develop all the Very lights. So they paid for or put a lot of money into the development of those with Showco, in partnership with Showco.
Right. So that company was quite key.
Yeah, and so we done one tour, and we had every Very light in existence on tour with us, which at the time was about 300, but we were lucky if 200 of them worked any one night. And we had this army of young guys. They all worked at the Space Center before they worked for Showco and developed these lights. They were all, you'd go backstage, and there was all these guys hunched over Very lights. It was like, we used to call it the hospital, you know, because they'd be working on light after light after light, you know, get it up in the rig. That one's fixed, get it up in the rig, you know.
It's like a machine.
Yeah.
Like just everything has to go away in one direction and come out in the other direction and then go into its exact place. I mean, what kind of size of crew were you working with on that tour, for those tours?
Well, I remember when I done Pink Floyd, jumping on a bit, we had 170 people.
Wow.
On tour, on the road.
Yeah. And
probably the similar type of numbers with Genesis, because we had 3 stages. In the summer, we're doing outdoor shows. We'd have a stage that was being constructed, a stage we were working on, and a stage that was being pulled down. So they would just leapfrog each other.
So yeah, I get it. Leapfrogging.
3 stages, 2 roofs. Yeah.
So it really meant you had 3 sets of gear. Kind of, or 2 at
Stadium
least.
one. Yeah, not the lights. That all trucked every day.
Oh,
you know.
Wow. And
we trucked that every day.
As Davina and Pope are saying, that must have used a lot of electricity. Who paid for that bill?
Not me.
No.
That's the promoter's cost. That comes out of his end.
Yeah. And unlike the early days, I'm always fascinated by this. The early days, as you say, you and the bands were extremely close. And I guess there's so few crew that it was like one family. By this time, there'd be a bit of a separation, I guess. You'd be close to the bands, but not everybody else underneath.
Oh, yeah, that was predominantly with people like Phil, Genesis, Pink Floyd, Agent Plant. I worked right there in with those guys. You know, I was put them to bed and got them out of jail.
Got them what they needed and made sure that certain other distractions were taken away from them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and the press. I mean, the press coverage, radio stations, newspapers, photographers.
Yeah.
Did you have to deal with all that stuff?
Paparazzi, Oh, I used to hate them. I got into a fight with them. I finished up on the I think on the front page. I might have a copy of it somewhere, which if I can dig it out, Brian, I've got crap everywhere. I'll try and send it to you. Of me fighting. It looks like I'm fighting with Phil Collins, but I wasn't. I was dragging him, trying to get him to a limo. We finished this tour in New York, and we had an end of tour party. And as he came out of this club, this paparazzi guy who'd been asked to stay away, pushed one of Phil's children, knocked it to the ground, and Phil flew at the guy. Luckily, I managed, and get him in a hug and get him into the car. And then I went back and I remonstrated, shall I say, with the photographer.
I was just going to say, a fight with Phil wouldn't be.
And he said, "Give me your name." I said, "You can call me Mr. I won't say the rest." It was I said, "But you can call me Mr."
Yes.
And with the thing, I pulled his camera, jerked his head down, and give him a beautiful right uppercut. Got him bang on the chin. Beautiful. Down he went.
Nowadays, that would be filmed by a million phones. It would be all over Twitter.
Oh, well, it finished up the New York Post, which is like a tabloid newspaper. It finished up on the front page. And the Daily Mail in England, the Sunday Mail.
Yeah.
It was on their magazine, the Sunday magazine that they put out. That picture appeared there. Well,
I got to look for that one.
Collins, but we weren't fighting. It was me rescuing Phil.
It wouldn't have been much of a fight with Phil Collins. He's a little guy. You're a big roadie.
Yeah, but I'm not big, and neither is. It's very strange that, because for quite a number of years I went everywhere with Phil. The Grammys, the Oscars, MTV Awards. I'd done them all. All the award shows. I had two tuxedos, so if one was in the dry cleaners, I wore the other one. You know,
So
I
there's a
went
lot-
everywhere with Phil.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
so-
really special. Yeah, I mean, he obviously relied on you a lot.
These security people, especially in North America, used to say to me, "So Mel, do you do martial arts?" And I go, "Well, yeah, I say, boxing." I go, "Yeah, I've done a little bit of boxing. I've done a little bit of karate. You know, do you carry a piece?" I go, "No."
It's a sandwich.
Me too. And they'd look at me like they couldn't believe I was there looking at this, you know, because in the 80s, Phil was bigger than sliced bread, you know.
Oh yeah, didn't you practice that Northeast England martial art Eki Thump?
Yeah.
Well, that's a thing on American tours too. Is in some parts of the country, everybody carries.
Yeah,
you'd have to watch for that. You know.
You were asking me, you know, do you? I go, no. Later on, then we got into, you know, actually on the tour, we had security. We had very top-end security, and they all carried, you know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they would have to. So you were very much involved in Phil's appearance at Live Aid.
Very much so. I've done both venues.
appearances.
That was again a David Bowie thing there, because the start of that day started with us flying from Battersea Heliport, which Battersea is on the River Thames, and the helicopters were landing there and flying into Wembley, in and out of Wembley. And so I'm there with Phil, his manager, Phil's wife, and the helicopter's there. And it's, right, we're getting on. There's Jill there. Yeah, we're getting on the
Concorde.
on this helicopter. My wife was with me, and I said, "Oh, we've run out of seats on this helicopter. I have to go because I have to go there with Phil. You're on the next helicopter." My wife wasn't happy. She was like, "No." And then I said, "But you have to sit there with David Bowie. Is that all right?" Yeah. Oh yeah. Go see you. She was well pleased. So she flew into Wembley Stadium on the helicopter with David Bowie. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, so Phil did both. I remember it well. I watched the whole thing on TV that day, some of it in the pub, some of it in the house. And you flew on Concorde. He went to Philadelphia. He wouldn't take any gear though. It was piano and mic at each end, and
piano and stuff. That was all taken care of because we had crew in England, you know. So that was all taken care of. And then his drum tech was in Philadelphia because he played with Robert Plant and Jimmy Page. And this is one of the things. I don't know if it was time lapse or memory lapse, but I didn't remember him playing with Eric Clapton there.
He did.
Until I seen the footage, and I went, I can't remember it. I still can't remember him playing there. It's only when I see the footage I know he did.
It's quite the thing because he did the Wembley thing and Sting was on stage with him, and then so he did that game.
Yeah.
You flew to America, which you couldn't do it as fast now because there's no Concorde.
Helicopter out of Wembley, to Heathrow Airport onto Concorde. He'd done interviews the whole flight, right? Got off there, New York, helicopter down to Philly. He'd done the show in Philly he'd done his own thing. He did it with Robert Plant and Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
And then we helicopter back to New York. Next morning on Concorde, I was home in time for Sunday lunch.
Wow. I mean, it takes a lot of energy. He had a lot of energy to do that.
Yeah.
And you.
I mean, we both got on the helicopter after Philadelphia, and we both just zonked.
In a sense, you didn't really get to experience Live Aid per se because you were so busy.
You're just making everything happen behind the scenes. You have no idea what happened on stage.
I was glued to that TV for the entire thing for both concerts.
Yeah. I mean, Robert and Jimmy weren't happy with the performance because they had that Tony from forgotten his name, from Power Station playing along.
Tony Thompson.
Yeah, two drummers, and they were just clashing. They really clashed.
I remember at the time it sounded awful on television. I don't know about when you were there.
Yeah, and I know Jimmy and they were doing a thing, and they wouldn't allow it to be released. Yeah.
Did you know Jimmy Page and Robert Plant well?
I'd met Jimmy. I'd met Robert rather, because Phil done a tour. He produced an album for him and done a tour with him.
Right.
So I'd met Robert before.
Well,
and
you'd seen him play with the Band of Joy. You'd seen the Band of Joy way back in the day, singing.
Yeah.
Robert Plant, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a hell of a thing to be involved with the Live Aid. I mean, it's there must be.
Absolutely. I mean, it's obviously a biggie for me. You know, one of the few people that can say I was at both.
Yeah.
Very few people can say that. There's probably, you know, a couple of dozen.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, you missed the Queen performance.
I did, but honestly, and people are going to hate me for saying this. I was never really a Queen fan.
Ooh.
I know. You would think. You would. I know. You would think with all that I've done, the bands I've worked with, I appreciate them, but I'm not a fan.
I get it. Yeah.
And I've seen them live once, and that was when I was touring with Phil, and we were in Australia, and we stayed in Melbourne one night. Everybody else had travelled on. Myself and Phil stayed, and we went to see Queen at the venue we'd done the night before. And I say, and they admitted they were dreadful. You know, Roger said, sorry guys, that was dreadful. And I said to him, if your sound guy could mix the sound as well as he dances, you'd have good sound.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
it's that. Yeah, it just takes one component to be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. They had a bad night.
Yeah. So when you were doing these Phil Collins and Genesis tours and so on, I mean, what was your involvement with the sound guys and the front of house sound? Did you get
nothing whatsoever?
Right.
Nothing whatsoever. That was me finished with the tools. That's you know. I had a technology bypass in 1980. You know.
But the desks went from that to that.
Yeah. Now they're back to this. You know, like everything's done on the laptop these days.
Well, that was the thing. It all got miniaturized back down into either one laptop or a very small like sound deck. Whereas
that's it.
When it first came out in like the early 90s, you'd have like an entire production studio on stage.
Yeah, 48 channel, 72 channel mixer. You know. When I first started,
me would be like, what do I even do with all this?
Monitors on the side of the stage for Wishbone Ash. I had 5 channels. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, back in your early days, in the early 70s, they wouldn't even have a front of house occasion. Sometimes it'd be the house PA.
Yeah, sometimes you got what you turned up there and took your chances. You know, it was only it got more professional. Like I say, working with Wishbone Ash, obviously the higher up the ladder you went, the better it got. You know, and that's when in the 70s we were using everybody I worked with was using Shoko from Dallas, Texas.
Great
doing
city,
all the sound.
I used to live there, Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. Well, even back then we were doing shows with Wishbone Ash. We had Springsteen open for us somewhere, upstate New York. Springsteen opened for us.
Wow.
Aerosmith opened for us. Then we got to Boston, and of course they were headlining. You know.
Yeah, Boston's a horrible city, though.
Yeah. I don't know who would be from there. No.
Yeah, Boston. Pope will tell you it's a horrible city.
Yeah. My dad completely didn't go to high school with the lead singer.
We went down to Austin, Texas, and a football stadium, ZZ Top headlining.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, yeah.
That would be good stuff, yeah. And for a young lad from Hartlepool, you were getting to go to all these places, but how much did you see? How much did you really see?
For the first 10 years, nothing.
Mm.
I seen airplanes, tour buses, bars, and gigs. That was it.
It's work.
I never went
hard work.
Oh, and it was hard work. It was tight, but and then, like I say, once I started became a tour manager, I'd make a point, and I still do it today. Even if I travel today, I'll dump my bags and I go out the hotel and I go for a walk in the area. I'll just go walking in the area and get to know the area, and I'll find a nice little bar because we're going to be there for 4 or 5 days, and I think I'll find myself a nice little bar where I can go to have a quiet beer afterwards, you know. And I was in Rio with Robert Plant and Jimmy Page. No, Sao Paulo with Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, and the people said, "Don't go out walking the streets here. You know, it's too dangerous." So dumped my bags straight out. I went to this local bar, watched the football, the soccer game with all the locals, you know. And I was wearing, at the time, I was wearing a Newcastle United shirt.
Surely coming from County Durham, that's a crime, isn't that an infraction?
It was given to me by one of the players, though.
All right. What, Gascoigne?
And I think River Plate wear the same colours. And so these guys, I was right there with them, all these local, and it was all in the wall bar. And when I got back to the local rep was saying, "Oh my God, you did this." I said, "Yeah, they're fine. They're coming to the show tomorrow night, these guys, you know." I'm back to them all along.
It's true. You can get, if you can.
Nothing's going to happen to me while I'm here. Not with these guys.
If you can meet the right locals, you're okay. You can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Nice.
Get them on your side.
Soccer, of course, being huge around the world, except in America, pretty much.
Yeah.
That is a uniting thing for a lot of people. It's a dividing for some people, but uniting as well.
Well, that was it. Since I walked in this bar, they looked at the shirt and they thought, "Oh, River Plate supporter. I'm a good guy." They were wearing the similar colours, you know.
Right.
You know, I was a good guy, although I had to explain, you know, in my best Brazilian.
Newcastle. Why, aye, man.
Why, aye, man.
Well, if you looked out and happened to be wearing the right colors, I wonder how different that story would turn out if you weren't.
Yeah, if I'd had the wrong colours on, if I'd had the blue shirt on instead of the black shirt,
You would have made the Sunday Mail headlines for a different reason then.
Yeah, could have been hanging from some underpass somewhere.
So I wanted to we're probably got about 10-15 minutes, just over 10 minutes left, touch on a couple more acts. So one of my favorite trios of all time is Pink Floyd. My favorite 3-piece bands. You worked with them in the Momentary Lapse of Reason tour, so that must have been something.
200 shows I did with those, and what I've just finished a 10-month world tour with Genesis.
Yeah,
and we were at Wembley. We'd done 4 nights at Wembley Stadium, and Steve O'Rourke, who was their manager, Pink Floyd's manager, was talking to the Genesis manager, and he introduced me, and he said, and Tony said to Steve, "This is who you need on your tour." And he said, "What does he do?" And Tony said, "I don't know, but he gets it done." I don't know what he does, but he gets it done.
Yeah.
And he said, and Steve said to me, "Can you be in Toronto next week?" I said, "Next week? Can be the end of the week?" He went, "Yeah, that's fine."
Yeah.
And that's it. I flew out there, spent a month in Toronto. We were at the airport in the aircraft hangar doing production rehearsals.
Wow.
And I was, once again, for that tour, I was hired as an assistant tour manager. But before we'd done the first gig, the tour manager had been fired, and they gave me the gig.
Wow. And the again, it's still word of mouth then. I mean, you didn't have to apply for this job.
I never, about a couple of couple of times where I had to do like interview. You know, there was Sinead O'Connor. You know, she was Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah.
You know, I had a meeting with their management. And I said, this isn't really, you know, they wanted an accountant. I wasn't an accountant. I've got that poster on my wall.
Glad I picked that one then.
Yeah.
I was at that tour in St. Louis.
Yeah, it must have been something else, John.
80 something,
Yeah.
like 80, 87, or was it 88?
80, yeah, it was. I think it was 86, 80, or 87, 88.
I think was the two.
Yeah.
The two a long tour, I guess, Mal. Like 200.
It was, yeah.
Global as well.
Oh, 22 months.
And you did the
That
Venice
tour
gig.
lasted.
Did you do the Venice gig?
Yeah.
The floating barge.
Yeah. And I had to do all the pre-stuff out there. I had to book all these hotels. I spent about 2 weeks in Venice prior to going from all the hotels, going along that front to all these plush hotels and booking rooms for all these celebs and, you know, that were coming out there to watch it. So I was the darling of the hotel business. I had some fine food and wine while I was there.
I bet you did.
Like, yeah, book our hotel.
Well, I've stayed at a couple. Stayed at a really nice hotel in Venice. There are some nice ones, that's for sure.
Yeah, we stayed out on the island, on the Lido, at the Cipriani, which is apparently one of the best hotels in the world.
Beautiful, yeah. But that was an interesting gig because the worries about the structural problems if the sound was too loud.
Yeah, there was all kinds of things going on there. We had, you know, people turning up saying we want 10 grand for a special insurance. You know,
was it guys in
cash.
dark suits?
Yeah, and we had this little girl. Honestly, she was 5 foot if she was an inch. She threw them out of the trailer. Yeah.
That's incredible, really. Yeah, there'd be all sorts of shenanigans.
Gondoliers, they protested and they threatened to cut the cables, you know, with that, you know, because we were ruining their business. But then, so what we did, we give them the equivalent of the mosh pit, you know, at the front of the stage. They were charging $100 a head to bring people out there in their gondolas, and Dave got the head gondolier on stage.
I've seen that. Yeah.
That was it. David couldn't do any wrong after that.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be the mosh pit if it was a floating barge. It'd be the slosh pit.
No, equivalent of it was very wet. You know. Have you seen that? Yeah, at Glastonbury when it rains there. You know, it's very similar to that.
And you must have done a few Glastonburys. I guess you did a Page and a Plant and Page Glastonbury.
Yeah, I did that with Page and Plant.
Yeah, and I know we're skipping over Pink Floyd, but we could do an entire show on that one. But yeah.
Oh yeah. You must. If I do this again, ask me about Russia.
Oh well, I sincerely hope you will do it again, my friend.
Page and Plant was fantastic. I loved, you know, they were another one that I just loved every night with those Egyptian musicians. You know, they were just fantastic.
It was a very different tour. Yeah, the music they did some interesting things with it. Kashmir particularly is a great performance on that one.
Oh, I love it. Just absolutely love that. You know,
I consider it one of the top 10 concerts I've ever been to.
Yeah. Jimmy,
I
mean, Robert refused to do a Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah,
sure.
He just refused to do that. You know.
In actual fact, I've got a little clip of the Glastonbury Kashmir. We'll just have a few seconds because Zeppelin are notorious blockers.
Yes, I know.
Just stop it at that because they do copyright block.
Oh, I know they do.
But yeah, that was a pretty special gig, I guess.
Yeah. Just and Robbie Williams was there, and they were having a kick around because they're both Brummies, from the same part of the world there. So he was having a kick around.
He's a good lad, Robbie Williams.
Yeah. he's in court. He's in court. He's in litigation with Jimmy Page at the moment because they're neighbours, and Robbie Williams is trying to dig his basement out. And Jimmy's blocking him because he's worried his house is going to fall down.
Well,
so
at least it's not Jimmy Page's Boleskine place that he used to own when Alistair Crowley built it. There you go.
And no, I didn't wear ear protection at concerts, and that's why I was measured up last week for hearing aids. I've got tinnitus. I'm answering one of the questions that's popped up there.
Yeah, thanks, Davina, for the question. Yeah, I mean, I guess nobody really thought of it. I didn't.
No. I was thinking of suing them all, for now I've got tinnitus and deafness.
Well, I mean, that's a suit that's going on in the American military right now, because for a long time they didn't give hearing protection to any of the guys on the line, myself included, really. We're shooting machine guns and everything, and they didn't give us anything that would actually dampen it. And all of a sudden, none of us can do so good anymore. It's funny that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the audiologist that I went to see last week, her husband was in the army and he's deaf, through firing his rifle.
Yeah, Pope's just deaf from listening to exceptionally metal music over the years.
I mean, that certainly didn't help my case any.
No.
Yeah. That's why I have tendinitis, is much too loud music growing up.
Yeah,
me too. I blame you all because all these gigs I went to deafened me. I blame you for putting them on.
I mean, I'm surprised at this point I can hear it all, as many shows as I've been to and practices and all that stuff. And I didn't start wearing ear protection until about 2010.
Yeah, I don't go to that many gigs these days just because of logistic issues, but I used to stand as close to the speakers as I could get in clubs. It's ridiculous now I think about it. I mean, crazy, but yeah, occupational hazard, I guess, Mal, just
yeah, but nobody warned you about it, except there was the sticker on those acoustic stacks, said produce more than 124 dB. So I guess that was a health warning.
Yeah, well, you did work for the Who later, although it was in their much quieter period in 2000. They weren't as loud as they were.
Yeah. That was great.
Had you always had a relationship with the Who, or was this a fairly new thing?
No, I had no relationship with them whatsoever. But they're managed by the same people that manage Page and Plant, so there's a connection there. Right. The only other time I'd ever seen the Who was back in '76, and I'd come home from an American tour, and they were playing in London. And the only reason I went is because a band called Little Feat were open for them, and I was still am, love Little Feat.
Oh, love George, yeah, brilliant guy.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to go. And as it happens, they were dreadful that night, but the Who were just fantastic. One of the best gigs, in my top 10. The Who at it was a football stadium in London, South London.
Charlton.
That's it. Yeah, Charlton. Yeah. That's where it was.
That's a major league gig. That was a brilliant gig. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Who fan.
Absolutely brilliant.
And I did see them on. You did the 2000 tour. I did see them on that tour in Glasgow. So it was a great gig. One of the finest gigs I've seen them give. In fact, I think.
I was so impressed by Roger, the fitness of those guys, especially Roger. And Pete, his guitar playing. I never really appreciated him as a guitar player before. Loved their music as a youngster. But I always just figured his strength was in the chord stuff that he used to play. Yeah. And it wasn't, he is quite a good lead player as well.
Well, I remember that tour in particular, when we went to see them in Glasgow, I was struck by the same thing, Mel, how good his lead guitar was on that tour.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
he's like Angus Young. He was absolutely tearing the place up. He was blisteringly
Yeah.
good. I think that was his peak for me.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was fantastic. I spoke to him about it. I can't believe it. I'm converted. I always thought you were just a rhythm player. Forgive me, but
I think he always kind of underplayed it himself. His songwriting was the thing he liked to talk about, but his guitar playing is actually way better than he's given credit for. I agree. But did you do the Albert Hall gig that we showed the clip of at the start?
No.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. That was the teenage cancer.
Part of it. That was the cancer one that Roger does every year. Daltrey does every year with various bands.
We have 2 minutes left.
All right, so 2 minutes left. We'll just wrap up. Mal, I have to say thank you very much, sir.
Like I say, I hope I haven't bored people to death.
No.
Got rid of any listeners you may have had.
I would like to thank everyone in the chat for being here and everybody out there listening on KGRA and all the other platforms we're on. I'd like to thank the panel here for being with me.
Nice to meet all you guys.
Mal, and by the way,
Likewise.
Mal, don't go away when the show ends. We'll talk backstage if you've got a few minutes. So just don't quit it. Don't quit out like Wilco did. He disappeared. So we're gonna have a chat after. But yeah, thanks everybody. This has been such a thrill for me. We will do it again, Mal, if you're up for that. Both here and on my That 70s Rock Fan channel. Please subscribe to everybody on this panel, by the way, everybody out there, Pope, Das Wolfen, Dustin, Keto Simple, and Martin, thank you for your production work. Thanks to the mods in the chat. The Albert Hall is still full of holes. There was an actor called Albert Hall. I often wondered if he was full of 4,000 holes. Mal, again, it's been brilliant.
Yeah. Pleasure, guys. I know I ramble on sometimes.
Oh, no.
To take a quote from...
I feel guilty of ramble on, Led Zeppelin. I feel guilty about interrupting you at times to ask questions. It's been awesome. And then on Monday, just to plug one thing, on Monday on my That 70s Rock Fan channel, we'll have your friend Alan Granny Grange as our guest. And then then we're going to get you guys together, you, Wilco, and Granny. That will be an awesome show.
It's chaos. 3 tour managers. We can't organise a piss up in a brewery.
I bet you did, though, organise a piss up in a brewery. Martin, are we good?
Oh, yeah.
Well, just let me know when you want to hit the button. But thanks, everybody. Keep on rocking. Stay safe.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Take care.